Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeremiah Ellison, and I am the chair of the Policy and Government Oversight Committee. I am kind of getting back into the flow of things and recovering from being out, and so I am going to pass the chairship of the meeting over to my vice chair, Robin Walmsley.
Thank you, Chair Ellison, and glad to have you here. Happy New Year's, everyone. We have quorum here, so I'm going to call to order our regular meeting for today, January 9th, 2023. I'll now have the clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Vito,
Present.
Councilmember Chavez,
Present.
Councilmember McCoskey,
Present.
Councilmember Johnson,
Present.
Vice Chair Wansley,
Present.
and Chair Ellison.
Here.
You have 6 present.
Thank you. Let the record show that we have quorum. Per usual, we have a substantial consent agenda. We have 29 items on it, which I'll read for the record right now. The first is authorizing a collective bargaining agreement with the Minnesota Teamsters Convention Center custodian units. The second is accepting a bid for epoxy grade 60 reinforcing bars and miscellaneous materials. Number 3 is accepting a bid for the Target Center sanitary piping repairs project. Number 4 is accepting a bid for Falwell and 46th Avenue South ADA pedestrian ramp program. Number 5 is accepting a bid for the Minneapolis Convention Center exhibit halls A, B, C, and D door replacement project. Number 6 is accepting a bid for the Target Center floor repair and coating phase 2 project. Number 7 is accepting a bid for the Target Center food service equipment grab and go stands. Number 8 is accepting a bid for concrete sidewalks, curbs, and gutter and alleys and driveways approaches. Number 9 is accepting a bid for electrical services at the Minneapolis Convention Center. Number 10 is authorizing a contract with Axon Enterprise, Inc. for a patrol car video management system for the police department. Number 11 is authorizing a contract with the Affordable Housing Connections to provide Affordable Housing Trust Fund home monitoring consulting services. Number 12 is authorizing a contract with CalAmerica for meter parking payment application services. Number 13 is authorizing a contract amendment with ASC Acquisition Company, LLC, for Minneapolis Parking Ramp Sign Replacement Project. Number 14 is authorizing a contract amendment with Bentley Systems, Inc. for the licenses and maintenance and support of the Bentley suite of products. Number 15 is authorizing a contract amendment with Change Equals Opportunity for group violence intervention services. Number 16 is authorizing a contract amendment with the Minneapolis Downtown Improvement District to provide outreach services. Number 17 is authorizing a contract amendment with SATOL. Not going to mess up the pronunciation on this one here, for labor standards, collaborative enforcement services. Number 18 is authorizing a contract amendment with Cost Planning and Management International, Inc. for Owners Project Representative Services for the Public Service Building Project. Number 19 is authorizing a contract amendment with RAM Construction Services of Minnesota, LLC for Ramp B waterproofing and structural repairs. Number 20 is authorizing a contract amendment with Michaels Corporation for cleaning and lining cast iron water mains. Number 21 is authorizing a contract amendment with M.A. Mortensen for construction manager services for the public service building. 22 is authorizing a contract amendment with Meisinger Construction Co. Inc. for the Minneapolis Convention Center for corridor ceiling replacement projects. Number 3 is authorizing a contract amendment with Pioneer Power Inc. for cooling coil replacement project. Number 24 is authorizing a contract amendment with Questions and Solutions Engineering, Inc. for consulting services for the public service building. Number 25 is authorizing a contract amendment with Wheelan Event Staffing Services, Inc. for building and event security at the Minneapolis Convention Center. Number 26 is authorizing a contract amendments for property maintenance, mowing, and snow removal services. Number 27 is authorizing contracts for building automation systems. 28 is approving a legal settlement for Casey White, Charles Stotts, versus Town Talk Diner versus the City of Minneapolis et al. Is there any discussions on any of these items? I see Councilmember Chavez.
Chair Wansley, I'd like to pull out number 20 for a separate vote and discussion.
Awesome. Let clerks please remove that item for a separate vote. I also put myself in queue. I wanted to make comments on item 28 and items 20 specifically. When it comes to items 20, the contract amendment with Michaels Corporation for cleaning and lining cast iron water mains. I just wanted to know for the public record, we've seen this particular vendor come up a couple of times. My residents have reached out to me about the public nature of this company and some of the affairs that they've been a part of and concerns about why public dollars are going to them. So in light of this, my office has reached out to procurement to initiate a conversation about how we can strengthen our contracting processes to prioritize using corporations that aren't participating in troubling political activity and just raising ethical standards for our contractors. When it comes to items 28, I just wanted to note for the record again, this is a legal settlement that reflects a failure on the part of the city to comply with the state data practices because MPD did not turn over documents that they were legally required to. So again, another example of how MPD is not in compliance with the law is costing taxpayers dollars once again. So I want to put those notes on the record, and then we will remove item 20 for a vote. Is there any other questions on the consent item? If not, if we could take a vote on the rest of the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor say nay. All right, the consent agenda has passed. That said, we will now pass it to Councilmember Chavez for comments on item 20.
Thank you, Chair Wansley. I know that Mitchell's Corporation is a Wisconsin-based company. I was wondering if staff was here in the room that could just walk us through our efforts to hire locally in this contract process and what that looked like.
Do we have any staff who could speak to this item?
And if not, I can just follow back up.
I see Director Johnson.
Yes, and I apologize, Vice Chair Wansley and Councilmember Chavez. Could you repeat the question? I did not catch all of that.
Yeah, thank you, Director. So the Mitchell's company is a Wisconsin-based company. I just want to figure out like the efforts to hire locally for this specific contract and what that process looked like.
Sure. Councilmember Chavez and council members, we have the target market program for programs or for bids under 175. This obviously did not qualify for that. So we follow state statute, does not allow us to select via geographical area. So we have to go by low bid for an item such as this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Oh, I see there, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was wondering if any colleagues could maybe expound on what the concerns are. I know troubling activities was mentioned. I think that the owner of this company might have run for governor of Wisconsin as a Republican or Senate or something like that in Wisconsin. But aside from his run, I was wondering for office, is there anything more that there are concerns with? And then I'll note on the bid tabulation sheet, I looked at that on the LIMS file. I see Michaels Corporation, the bid amount was $3.6 million. The next closest bid was $5.3 million from J. Fletcher Creamer and Son. So I'm sure that probably had something to do with the selection, but I was wondering if any colleagues could elaborate on the concerns.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. I can speak to the political activity piece. The president of the company, in terms of the concerns around political activity, is also ran as a very explicit election denier, very much did not lend a lot of opposition to the insurrection on January 6th. And also the concerns that I've heard from my constituents is also the company's involvement in building the Keystone Pipeline, which of course, in concerns of climate justice and also indigenous sovereignty was a major, pipeline fight that really jeopardize the quality of our water and also jeopardize that sovereignty of our indigenous nations. So I want to note that as part of the problematic history that's been involved with that company. I can't speak to the bids necessarily. I don't know if Councilmember Chavez has nothing on that, but I will know for the record, those were my concerns around some of the political activity.
Thank you for elaborating on that. So I certainly understand the Keystone Pipeline piece of that. This council has taken a position in opposition to the Keystone Pipeline, and so obviously that's a significant concern. But I guess maybe I'd ask our city attorney, Mr. City Attorney, if you were able to share any details. I'm curious the political positions of owners of companies. Is that something that legally can come into purview for us when deciding whether or not we approve a contract with them? Is that something that's legal for us to do, is to say, we don't like your politics or ideology?
Vice Chair Wansley, Councilmember Johnson, no, that's not a permissible factor. As Lori Johnson mentioned, there's a state law and we're required to take the lowest responsible bidder. And then there are considerations related to that that I could have our contracts attorney take a look at and get back to you if you'd like. But no, in terms of political speech and First Amendment speech, it's not a proper consideration for award of a bid.
Thank you. That's helpful. That's what I thought was the case. So, I definitely have some concerns about the fact that on the record at this council meeting, that was articulated as one of the concerns or reasons that would give some pause over this contract. But Mr. Attorney, I'm also curious on the Keystone Pipeline issue, because this is where I do see some potential concerns here about a contractor that's essentially working in opposition to a city position. Is that something that is that legal for us to potentially not go with a contract with somebody for their work on a project that we have taken a position against?
Vice Chair Wansley, Councilmember Johnson, I do not believe that that's a proper consideration as well. Okay. This particular contract doesn't have anything to do per se with the Keystone Pipeline. It's its own unique or its own distinct matter, and then again the state bid law would apply.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Well, I'll just add my own commentary then. Obviously, I am not an election denier. I believe the elections were completely legitimate in 2020, and I think it's disgusting the election misinformation that's out there. And, just the other day we had the anniversary of the insurrection that happened in our nation, which is a stain on American history, among other stains in American history. And I think everyone that was involved in that needs to be held fully accountable in the eyes of the law. And I think it's extremely unfortunate that anybody, let alone a large business owner, might hold differing views on those two issues. I also think we need to make sure we are handling this matter properly from a legal standpoint and from a fiduciary responsibility standpoint. And it's out there on this bid. We can see exactly what options we had. One was $3.6 million and one was 5.3, and if we're rounding up, $5.4 million. And so that's, $1.8 million difference. And that is not insubstantial in our city. And it, in fact, is actually what we're legally required to go with. These are our processes. And if we have concerns around our processes, let's have that conversation. But, other than that, I think it doesn't make sense to single out a company just because we don't like somebody's politics in it, when doing so or potentially taking an action other than approval would be illegal. And that's my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. I see Councilmember Ellison, and then I'm in stack.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wansley. Just had one quick question. I'll be supporting this for two reasons. One is for all of the reasons I think Councilmember Johnson just illustrated, but the other is just because we had the water main issue in my ward, affected 3, 4, and 5, my understanding, not too long ago. And so I get the urgency of us needing to take this contract on. But I did have a few more questions. I know that we've made some changes with, with our own target market program, not just taking lowest bid. But I'm going to be rusty on my verbiage here, but I think best value is how we're categorizing that now. I also know that we've had contracts that they get awarded at one level, but they come back to POGO again and again with adjustments and higher amounts and just sort of wondering. I know we have to follow state law here, so not looking to kind of litigate that. But let's say this company, how do we protect ourselves against the company kind of coming back saying, "Hey, we're having overruns, we're having delays, we're having price increases," and then we don't end up filling that $1.8 million gap over time anyway. Just sort of wondering if state law sort of has any protections in that regard, and if we have any interest as a city in applying some of the changes we've made to target market to state law.
Councilmember, thank you, Director Johnson.
Yes, Councilmember Ellison, I will attempt to answer that broad question. We do have to stay within the confines of the state law, of course. Part of that is contract management. We are very careful about change orders. We know that those can drive up the price of a contract. We want to make sure if there's any plan or generally not a plan, but if there's any chance that a contract is going to expand, that we follow whatever bid requirements are for that potential expansion. So for instance, in the past, if there was a contract and it was intended to be around 900,000, but there was potential it would be more than $1 million, we would bring it to council. We no longer, of course, do that, but that's how we try to look at it from a procurement perspective, is what is worst case. There are times when things change, soil conditions, unforeseen weather conditions in a contract. It could be a professional services contract, and there's something else that needs to be explored. So there are changes that happen, but those contract managers within the departments are charged with carefully monitoring that and making sure that everything that we are paying for is a service that we have received, and that they have done their due diligence to make sure that there is no attempt to make up a difference in a contract. Procurement can't really manage that piece of it because they aren't there seeing the work done. They aren't approving those invoices. That goes back to the contracts, and we heavily rely on the contract managers to do that. And I do believe in conversations with Public Works, they are very well aware of that and do manage those contracts.
Thank you so much.
Sure, you're welcome.
Answer your questions. Thank you, Director Johnson. I had me on stack, and then I see Councilmember Vita. I just wanted to note, for the public, the legislative body is charged with two clear functions: oversight and budget. 2 of 3, and I would hope we take those serious. And in terms of taking this serious, is in this committee is to be able to scrutinize the activities of our vendors that are being, supported through taxpayer dollars. And I've seen a number of contracts pass through this committee, this not being the first one. Clear, which was used to in the deportation of our residents, again, something that harms, undocumented residents that we all represent in our community, in the city. So I do think it's important that we do follow the activities of the companies that we are supporting using taxpayers' dollars, and to raise the ethical standards of those vendors to make sure that they are not harming our residents that they're providing basic services to. So we should ensure that equity exists across the board. And I see this as an opportunity, as Councilmember Johnson offered, to initiate an ongoing conversation of how we can raise those ethical standards and also bring in the city attorney's office, which I will share. There are times where our city attorney's office in the past, when it came to rent control, when it came to the 15 minimum wage, said that we could not pursue something as a legislative body. And I'm glad that our residents encouraged and pressured the legislative contingency of this government to say, no, you need to stand with us. You need to make sure that we do have a city that honors, wages, quality wages for our workers, and also ensure that, we're protecting a housing affordability for our residents as well. And that allowed us to actually move legislation forward like a 15 minimum wage, and hopefully very soon a strong rent control policy that just, a couple months, years ago, our city attorney's office said we couldn't do either. So I see this as an opportunity, again, to see how we can continue these conversations, raise that bar. That is part of what I see as powerful of our oversight and budgetary functions of this council, and look forward to figuring out how we, again, can raise those ethical and equitable standards in partnership with our staff. With that, I will pass it to Councilmember Vital.
Thank you, Chair Wansley. I just had a question about the timeline, because Councilmember Ellison brought up the point that this is the water main that affected our wards, and I was just wondering, are they going to begin the repair work after this contract is approved after? Maybe this is a public works and infrastructure question.
Would you like me?
Instead.
Director Johnson, would you like her to ask?
If she can, I'd be happy to.
Oh.
It looks like okay. I'll check in with Public Works. Just wondering on timeline, because we have this week to approve this through council, and if this is any delay in the work that we need in our respective wards done for this water main. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to respond to the comments around the oversight and the activities of vendors. Certainly, I think the Keystone Pipeline is an important issue to raise. I guess where my concern really is around not the activities of vendors, but the activities of an individual were brought up, because it's the individual who owns that company who, as a private citizen, is choosing to take political positions that I vehemently disagree with. But then their positions are being brought up in committee when talking about a company and whether, and frankly, this contract that's before us for approval. And I think we just need to be really careful when having conversations like this. I mean, this has already been on the record. This is something people can pull up online now after this committee. And frankly, I think we're opening the city up to a lawsuit. And that's a real concern here.
That's it for discussion, I see. So the proposal on the table was to take a separate vote on this item. Clerks, can I have you do a roll call?
Yes. Councilmember Vita,
Aye.
Councilmember Chavez,
No.
Councilmember Koski,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Vice Chair Wansley,
Nay.
Chair Ellison.
Aye.
We have 4 ayes and 2 nays.
That item carries. The next item that we have on our agenda is for discussion, considering the recent bargaining contract for the Building Trades Inspectors unit for 2022 through 2024. This is authorizing the collective bargaining agreement with those inspectors. So we have a presentation and discussion related to the authorization of that contract. I'll now invite Rashida DeLoyne to give that presentation for us.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wansley. That is correct. We did reach an agreement through mediation with the building trades inspectors on December 19th, I believe, for a 3-year term. Included in that term, I just want to highlight the demographics of 29 members in this unit, as well as their BIPOC demographics of 20% of people of color and 17% female. The specifics of this agreement are as follows. Effective January 1 of 22, we were at 2.5%. Effective January 23, 2.5%, and then 4.5% in 2024. In order for us to reach an agreement, obviously economics was a major factor. What the city did in conjunction with the union was agree to a class maintenance study and market adjustment to study the classifications in this unit, in which is actually active right now and has begun. Upon conclusion of that study and adjustment, if that yields an increase, this unit will receive that increase per the findings, and they're actually brought in transparently through this process. In addition to the market and class study, this group will also receive the $1,000 retention incentive We've reached this agreement in the same terms as we did with the other units. Some of the non-economic highlights that I want to flag is that we've added Juneteenth to this bargaining agreement. Obviously, it's gone into effect, I think, back in 2021. In addition to that, we reached a letter of agreement to allow this group to move through classifications from a building inspector to a senior building inspector without a competitive examination, as well as some other flexibility in pay dates and pay progressions consistent with contract terms. And so this is a part of the total agreement that we reached through mediation with the building inspectors.
Thank you so much, Director Maloney. I don't see anyone for questions. I just want to commend your leadership in getting this contract to this point. I requested this presentation because I know council saw for many times we had our building trade inspectors come to the chambers, speak to committees, and ask for their firm support and making sure we have the strongest contract for our city employees. So I want to thank you in making sure, we honored that agreement on the city side. And I will wait to see if there's any questions. All right, Councilmember Ellison.
Just wanted to echo your thanks. I know that on one hand, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers. On the other hand, we know that we want to provide the best possible environment for our workers. And so you've got to, you're kind of on the front lines of creating that balance. And so I know that that's really difficult. And so I'm glad that we've got something before us here that we're going to be able to vote on as a council. And just want to thank you for your work and for the presentation because, as Vice Chair said, it was really, we had our workers in chamber letting us know what their needs were. So I think it's appropriate that we get an update on the status of that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair Ellison. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, I'll move approval for this item and do a voice vote. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor say nay. All right, that motion carries. And that also means the consent agenda is approved. With that, we have concluded all business that has come before us today. And if there's no objections, we can get up out of here. Call us adjourned.